12 years after they erased me, I got a letter in the mail. A thick, cream-colored envelope with floral borders and gold-stamped cursive. "You're invited." It was an invitation to the 60th wedding anniversary of my grandparents, the matriarch and patriarch of the family. A grand celebration, apparently, one that would bring together every branch of the family tree, every cousin, every sibling, every aunt and uncle, even me, even after everything. There was no handwritten note, no message saying, "We hope to see you again." Just a cold, formal insert with the date, time, venue, and a tagline. "Join us as we celebrate family, love, and legacy." Legacy. That word stung the most, because for 12 years, I wasn't part of their legacy. No one called, no one wrote, no one asked if I was still alive. They didn't just ignore me. They wiped me out like a stain they were too embarrassed to clean. I was 17 when it happened, old enough to pack my own bags, too young to understand that sometimes family is just a well-dressed form of cruelty. It wasn't one fight or one moment. It was a slow erasure, painted over with fake concern and closed-door whispers. They believed a lie. Or worse, they knew the truth and ignored it because it was easier. And now, 12 years later, they wanted me to dress up and show up for a cake-cutting ceremony, smile next to people who let me drown. Number not unless I had a reason. Because I wasn't that scared, apologetic girl anymore. I wasn't the one who begged to be heard. I wasn't someone they could silence with guilt. If I was going to show up, it wouldn't be for closure. It would be for clarity. To remind them what they lost when they chose to forget me. Back then, I used to think being the reliable one would keep me safe. I wasn't loud like my cousins. I wasn't charming like my sister Camille. I didn't get in trouble or break rules. I was the fixer. The one who stepped up. Who covered when things went wrong, who always showed up. But that didn't save me. At 17, I was already working weekends and school nights at a local bookstore to help with groceries. I used my savings to pay down Camille's credit card debt, twice. I sold my laptop to help with Mom's hospital bills when she broke her arm. And when my little brother Evan needed money for college applications, I picked up a second job and skipped prom. No one asked me to do those things, but no one stopped me either. It became expected, like a silent contract I never signed. And then one day, it all ended. It started with a lie, Camille's lie. A gold bracelet went missing, something our aunt had gifted Mom years ago. It wasn't worth much, but it had sentimental value. Camille told Mom she saw me take it, said I was acting weird and probably pawning it for cash. I laughed when I first heard the accusation. I thought it was a joke. But Mom didn't laugh. She just stared at me and said, "How could you?" There was no conversation, no benefit of the doubt. No one asked me where I'd been or what I'd done. The assumption was immediate and absolute. I tried to defend myself. I showed my receipts, my work schedule, the fact that I hadn't even been home when the bracelet supposedly disappeared. But none of it mattered. They believed Camille because Camille had always been the shining one. The dancer, the social butterfly, the good girl who never got her hands dirty, because I was always the one scrubbing for her. The night they kicked me out, I stood in the hallway with a half-zipped duffel bag and a knot in my throat so tight I could barely breathe. Mom crossed her arms. Dad, my real dad, looked away. He didn't say anything, just stared at the floor. I said, "You really believe I'd steal from you?" Mom replied, "I don't know what to believe anymore." That sentence still haunts me. I slept on a friend's couch for 2 weeks, then another friend's garage. I worked, studied, and tried to keep up with school, but the walls kept closing in. I missed scholarship deadlines. I couldn't afford the SAT retake. I was exhausted, alone. Then months later, I found the blog post. It was anonymous, shared under a fake name, but filled with details only someone from inside my family would know. It told the story of a girl who betrayed her mother, who stole family heirlooms, who played the victim after the years of manipulation. It didn't say my name, but it didn't have to. Anyone who knew us would recognize the story. The post made its way around local forums. I lost an internship interview because of it. One of my high school teachers who used to support me stopped returning my emails. I knew it was Camille. I confronted her once through email. I wasn't angry. I just asked, "Why?" She replied, "You're the one who left." That was when I understood. In their eyes, I had erased myself. I kept going. I couldn't afford college, so I worked full-time and took free online courses at night. I learned how to freelance, how to build websites, how to brand small businesses. I created my own name, one that wasn't tied to theirs. By 25, I was running my own design studio from a tiny one-bedroom apartment. I had clients across 3 states and a waiting list 6 weeks long. But every time someone asked about my family, I froze. I didn't know how to explain being disowned for something I didn't do. I didn't know how to say they believed a lie and never looked back. So I said nothing. I didn't go home for holidays. I didn't respond to texts. Eventually, they stopped coming. I'd scroll through social media sometimes and see photos. Camille at college, Evan in his graduation gown, my parents on vacation. Like I'd never existed. Like I'd never bought Camille's books or filled out Evan's FAFSA forms or waited 6 hours in the ER with Mom. They forgot me so quickly it made me question whether I was ever real to them at all. And yet now, 12 years later, they wanted me to come smile in a group photo? At the 60th wedding anniversary of the same grandparents who hadn't once asked where I'd gone. I held the invitation in my hands for a long time. Not out of sentiment, but calculation. Because I wasn't the girl they threw out anymore. And if they wanted me to walk back into that ballroom and pretend everything was fine, they were going to learn the difference between silence and survival. The venue was a country club just outside town, golf carts parked neatly in a row, strings of lights draped across the veranda, and a giant 60 Years of Love banner hanging over the entrance. It was beautiful and painfully fake. I arrived early and stayed near the edges, watching as everyone filed in. Cousins I hadn't seen since high school. Aunts and uncles who used to pat my head and call me the responsible one. They moved through this crowd like I was invisible. Except Camille. She saw me the moment I stepped in. The smile on her face flickered, but only for a second. Then she crossed the room, drink in hand, voice syrupy sweet. Well, didn't expect to see you here. I kept my tone even. You invited me. She blinked. Technically, Mom sent the invites. You know how much this means to Grandpa. I nodded slowly. 60 years. It's a big deal. Exactly, she said. And so maybe just be cool? We don't need any drama tonight. I smiled. I'm always cool. She didn't know how to respond to that, so she left. I made my way through the room, not out of curiosity, just to feel it. The awkward glances, the quiet tension, the whispering I wasn't supposed to hear. I didn't belong here, but I wasn't here to belong. I was here to be remembered. Camille gave the first toast, of course. She stood on stage, glass raised, talking about legacy, love, and how important family is. She looked radiant, fake, polished to perfection. When she said, I think we've all grown stronger together, I actually felt my jaw clench. So when the MC invited others to speak, I didn't hesitate. I walked up slowly, heels echoing against the wooden floor. Some people clapped, politeness, some stiffened. I reached for the mic. My name is Rowan. You might remember me, or maybe not. It's been 12 years since anyone here said my name out loud. The room went still. I was 17 when I was erased from this family. No goodbye, no conversation, just one accusation, one lie, and silence. Camille shifted in her seat. I didn't come here to cause a scene. I came here because for years people told a version of my story that wasn't true, and I decided it's time I tell it myself. I pulled a folder from my bag, thin but heavy. In this folder are a few things. Copies of the receipt from when I paid Mom's emergency room bill using the money I saved working nights at a diner. I was 16. A few heads turned toward my mother. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Here's a photo of the used laptop I bought Camille after she crashed hers 2 days before finals. That was my entire paycheck. I have the Venmo screenshots from when I transferred her the money. Camille's jaw tightened. I held up a printed email chain. This is from Evan's college advisor. I was the one who filled out his FAFSA form. I was the one who paid his $250 admission deposit. Again from my own bank account. I set the folder down. I did those things not because I had to, but because I believed I was part of a family. I paused, voice steady. And yet, when Camille said I stole Mom's bracelet, not one person asked from my side. You just believed her. You let me go like I never mattered. You called it a choice, but the truth is, you made it easy to leave. You made it impossible to stay. Camille stood abruptly. She's twisting everything! But before she could finish, a voice rose behind her. I think we should let her finish. said someone I didn't expect. Uncle Ray. He stood slowly. I remember when you left. I asked what happened, and your mom told me you didn't want to be part of the family anymore. He looked at me. I believed her. I shouldn't have. My throat tightened, but I kept speaking. I'm not here to fight. I don't want your apology. I just want my story back, and I want it told right. Then from the far end of the room someone else stood. My grandfather. He stepped forward, his voice quiet but clear. She's the only one who ever showed up. The rest of you just took and took. The silence that followed felt like a crack down the middle of the room. Camille left first, heels clicking angrily as she pushed past guests. My mother followed, not saying a word. I stood there a moment longer, looking out at the stunned crowd. Then I said, I'm not walking away. You already did. I'm just not chasing anymore. And with that, I stepped down. The night after the anniversary, I didn't sleep. Not because I regretted what I said, but because the silence afterward was louder than anything I'd spoken into that microphone. I stared at my phone, half expecting it to ring with someone saying, "Hey, thank you for standing up." Or at least, I had no idea. But that never came. What came instead was a string of text messages, each one colder than the last. Camille was first. I can't believe you'd ambush the family like that. You need help. Then Mom. After everything we've been through, you still choose to be cruel. You've broken this family apart. Then Evan. You're seriously the most selfish person I've ever known. You didn't have to make it public. Their words didn't surprise me, but they still hit like tiny pebbles against a window I had already closed. The next day, I sat at my desk and wrote an email. Not a dramatic send-off. Not an attack. Just the truth. Subject, one last thing. Dear family, I didn't show up to destroy anything. I showed up to restore something. My voice. You erased me 12 years ago. I lived with your version of the story, quietly. But that version was a lie, and I'm no longer willing to carry it for your comfort. I'm not seeking apologies or explanations. I'm not angry anymore, but I'm done. I won't be participating in holidays, phone calls, or damage control. I won't be available to smooth things over or hold space for pain that was never acknowledged. If any of you want a real conversation, one rooted in accountability, not performance, you know where to find me. Until then, I'm choosing distance, not because I hate you, but because I finally love myself enough to stop bleeding for people who keep holding the knife. Rowan, I hit send. And for the first time in years, I didn't double-check my words. I didn't wonder how they'd twist them. I didn't brace for backlash. I just let go. That night, Camille posted a story on Instagram, her holding a glass of champagne captioned, "Some people love being the victim when they run out of people to blame. Fake families is a nil attention seeker." I didn't reply. Mom called 3 times. The 3rd time she left a voicemail. Her voice was shaking, part frustration, part sadness. I didn't want it to come to this. I just wanted peace. Why couldn't you leave the past in the past? Evan sent a final message. You betrayed us again. Just stay gone. This time I didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt. It did. But because for the first time in my life, I knew I wasn't the problem. I had spent years begging for scraps of love from people who only saw me as useful. I gave, they took, I forgave, they forgot. Now I was done playing the role they assigned me. I wasn't the villain, I wasn't the savior, I was just Rowan. And that was finally enough. A few weeks after I sent that final email, I packed up my life and moved. There was no dramatic goodbye, no angry exit, just quiet. It felt like finally closing a chapter that had been bleeding through the pages of my life for far too long. I didn't tell anyone. Not out of spite, but because I didn't owe anyone a notice. I had spent years over-explaining myself to people who never really listened. This time, I chose silence. Not the kind they once used to erase me, but the kind that healed. The new apartment wasn't fancy. The city wasn't far. But everything about it felt different. I could breathe. I didn't wake up with that heavy weight in my chest, the one that asked if today was the day someone in my family might reach out, or worse, attack. I changed my number, deleted the old group chats, blocked Camille, Mom, Evan, not to punish them, but to protect myself. The boundary wasn't for them, it was for me. And then I wrote. I didn't expect to, but it came naturally. quiet reflections on emotional exhaustion, the toll of invisible wounds, what it means to be the strong one in a family that only remembers your strength when they need something. I started a blog. At first, no one read it, but slowly, strangers found me, people who had stories that sounded too much like mine. One woman wrote, "You put into words what I have never been able to say out loud." Another said, "Your courage makes me feel less alone." And then there was this one message I'll never forget. "I'm still stuck in a family that takes everything from me and calls it love. I wish I had your courage." That message sat with me for days, not because it praised me, but because it made me realize how many people are walking around carrying that same kind of silence I once did, believing that love means self-erasure, that family is a debt you never stop repaying. I thought forgiveness meant going back, that healing only happened if they finally understood. But now I know the truth. Forgiveness isn't returning, it's releasing yourself from the expectations that once kept you small. It's giving up the fantasy that the people who broke you will be the ones to fix you. Some people will never see the full weight of what they did to you. They'll rewrite history, spin narratives, post smiling photos while you're left holding the fragments. But the most powerful thing I ever did wasn't calling them out. It was walking away without asking for permission. These days, when someone asks about my family, I don't flinch. I just say, "We don't speak," and let the silence do the rest. I no longer need to justify my peace. I earned it. I chose it. And it's mine to keep. If you've ever been where I was, torn between loyalty and sanity, I hope you know this. You are not selfish for saying no. You are not cruel for choosing distance. And you are not broken because you finally stopped bleeding for people who never once brought you a bandage. Have you ever been the one who stopped sacrificing for people who never saw your value? What happened when you finally chose yourself?